Meanwhile, other methods of telling the truth about the idols had been devised by the more imaginative among the swordsmen of Islam. Firoz Shah Tughlaq had the idol at Puri perforated for passing ropes through it and dragged it along the road to Delhi. The pieces of the idol at Kangra were given by him to the butchers for being used as weights while selling meat. The copper umbrella of the same idol he got recast into pots for heating water, with which the faithful washed their hands, feet, and faces before saying their prayers. Mahmud Khalji of Malwa had the idol at Kumbhalgarh reduced to lime, which was put in pans, betel leaves, and the Hindus were forced to eat their god. He had taken literally a latter-day story of the Mahmud of Ghazni had done to the idol of Somnath. He had taken literally a latter-day story of what Mahmud of Ghazni had done to the idol of Somnath when the Brahmins arrived in his capital to ransom their god. The Brahmins, who were custodians of the idols and idol houses and teachers of the infidels, also received their share of attention from the soldiers of Allah. The Brahmins, who were custodians of the idols and idol houses. Our citations contain only stray references to the Brahmins because they have been compiled primarily with reference to the destruction of temples. Even so, they provide the broad contours of another chapter in the history of medieval India, a chapter which has yet to be brought out in full. The Brahmins are referred to as magicians by some Islamic invaders and massacred straight away. Elsewhere, the Hindus who are not totally defeated and want to surrender on some terms are made to sign a treaty saying that the Brahmins will be expelled from the temples. The holy cities of the Hindus were the nests of Brahmins who had to be slaughtered before or after the destruction of temples, so that these places were cleansed completely of kufr, and made fit as abodes of Islam. Amir Khusrau describes with great glee how the heads of Brahmins danced from their necks and fell into the ground at their feet. This is a quote from Amir Khusrau. Along with those of other infidels from whom Malik Kafur had slaughtered during the sack of the temples at Chidambaram. Firoz Shah Tughlaq got bags filled with cow's flesh, tied them around the necks of Brahmins, and had these mines of kufr and shirk paraded through his army camp at Kangra. Mahmud Shah II Bahmani bestowed on himself the honor of being a Ghazi by killing in cold blood the helpless Brahmana priests of the local temple after Hindu warriors had died fighting in defense of the fort at Kondapalli. The present-day progressives, leftists and Dalits, quote-unquote Dalits, whose main plank is anti-Brahminism, have no reason to feel innovative about their ideology. Anti-Brahminism in India is as old as the advent of Islam. Our present-day Brahmin baiters have to be told that they are no more than the ideological descendants of the Islamic invaders. The next step which the heroes of Islam took after a place had been purged by the sword from the filth of impurity and the thorn of God plurality, and the foundations of infidelity destroyed, was to build mosques and madrasas, etc., on the same sites where the temples stood, most often with the materials of those very temples. The operation was generally preceded by a pious ritual in which the victors prostrated themselves and praised Allah for the honor He bestows on Islam and the Muslims. Cows were slaughtered on the temple sites in order to render them unclean for the Hindus for all time to come. It had been noticed that the Hindus demolished the mosques and rebuilt their temples on the same sites whenever they recaptured a place. Now the mosques and madrasas could spread the light of Islam without interruption. Finally, the servants of Allah took over the khatibs, the muezzins, the mutasibs, and the qazis. The uproar of the heathens gave way to shouts of Allahu Akbar, and the strongholds, quote-unquote strongholds of heathenism were made into abodes of Islam. Meanwhile, the endowments enjoyed by the temples had been transferred to the upcoming Islamic establishments, so that whatever temple priests had survived the slaughter had to starve while the Muslim clerics prospered. The most significant feature of our histories, however, is the religious zeal felt for felt or exhibited by the swordsmen of Islam before and after the infidels who persisted were sent to hell. The Brahmins massacred or molested or expelled idols, desecrated temples, demolished, and mosques raised in their stead. The Prophet of Islam appears in a dream and bids the Sultan to start on the holy expedition, leaving no doubt that the victory of religion was assured. Amir Khusrau was very eloquent about the transformation that was taking place. When the hordes of Alauddin Khilji sacked the temple of Somnath, he exulted, "The sword of Islam purified the land as the sun purifies the earth." This is his quote. His enthusiasm broke all bounds when the same hordes swept over South India. Quoting him again, "The tongue of the sword of the Khalifa of the time, which is the tongue of the flame of Islam, has imparted light to the entire darkness of Hindustan by the illumination of its guidance, and several capitals of the gods of the Hindus in which Sanatanism had prevailed since the time of jinns have been demolished. The quote is going on, all these impurities of infidelity have been cleansed by the Sultan's destruction of idol temples, beginning with his first expedition to Deogir, so that the flames of the light of the law illumine all these unholy countries. Allah be praised." One wonders whether this poet of Islam and a Sufi luminary is being honored or slandered when he is presented in our own times as the pioneer of secularism. Or perhaps secularism in India has a meaning deeper than what we find in the dictionaries or dissertations on political science. Unfortunately, Sitaram Goel did not live long enough to read the scholarship on decoloniality and the sources of the word secularism, and then he would be sure that he was right. We may not be much mistaken if, seeing its studied exercise in blackening everything Hindu and whitewashing everything Islam, we suspect that this secularism is nothing more than the good old doctrine of Islam in disguise. If our citations prove anything, and prove it beyond a shadow of doubt, it is this, that in doing what they did to Hindu temples, the heroes of Islam were inspired by their religion and religion alone. They cannot be blamed if the plunder which occasionally preceded the destruction of temples was viewed by them as a well-deserved reward for doing service to Allah and His last prophet. They knew what the Quran and the Sunnah had prescribed and promised in very clear language, and therefore had a clean conscience. It is a different matter altogether that their religion provided a cover or a posteriori justification, as Professor Mohammad Habib would like to put it, for some of the basest motives in human nature, and attracted to its standard some of the worst hoodlums and gangsters and bloodthirsty bandits that the world has known. The fact that these despicable characters have been made to masquerade as mujahids or ghazis and shaheeds and sultans and sufis by Muslim historians can hoodwink no one except those who either do not know the facts or have the same moral standards as those of Islam. Our Marxist professors and other pundits of secularism are very much mistaken when they discover or invent economic and or political motives for explaining away the crimes committed by Islam. Either they have remained totally ignorant of what the theology of Islam prescribes vis-a-vis the unbelievers, their women and children, their properties, their homelands, their religious teachers and their places of worship, or their deep-seated animus against everything Hindu has pushed them into the camp of those who are out to destroy everything for which this country has been held in high esteem down the ages. We shall give them the benefit of doubt and assume that their ignorance of the theology of Islam, rather than that their anti-Hindu animus is the culprit. We proceed to present that theology in the chapter that follows.